What happens before a race? Thanks to modern video games, we may fake to be in the first full week of April 1994, the one finishing with the Sunday 10th, close to the Autodelta facility in Milan. What is Autodelta? Well, was the name of Alfa Romeo's competition department, established in 1962, named Autodelta by Carlo Chiti and Ludovico Chizzola, former Alfa Romeo and Ferrari engineers. This company was officially made a department of Alfa Romeo on 5th March 1963 by the then president of Alfa Romeo, Giuseppe Luraghi. Originally based in Feletto Umberto, Udine, the team subsequently moved closer to Alfa Romeo's facilities in Settimo Milanese in 1964, officially becoming Autodelta SPA. The move enabled Autodelta to use the Balocco test track for new racing cars and prototypes. Here in 1994, there is a special load of cargo to be moved from Italy to Belgium, and once arrived close to Zolder racetrack, this special cargo will become something special and historic. Something also that was already strongly historic for Alfa Romeo, because the year before, 1993, won the DTM championship. I am sure that the Deutsche Tourenwagen Meisterschaft is something very known for racing enthusiasts, petrol heads and passionate, but back then, at this point, more than 30 years ago, was absolutely something almost impossible, like climbing the Everest for an Italian brand to go to Germany to beat all the manufacturers back then participating in the DTM and come back in Italy with the trophy of the winner. Nonetheless, Alfa Romeo anyway did it in the first year which participated, that was as said, 1993, with Nicola Larini, the Italian ace, clinching the title. And going back to our special video games that nowadays can fulfill our spare free time, in front of us with Euro Truck Simulator 2. It will allow us to play a little game that is without a GPS, like was 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, starting from Milan and going to bring our trailer to the Zolder racetrack in Belgium. Back then you had a map more or less reproduced like this one, and if you are old like me or more, I'm sure that for a long trip you would have written down to your block notes all the links to bring you at least around the end of the path in front of you and under your wheels. So maybe you would have written down that from the Autodelta facility in Settimo Milanese, like if we were the couple of truck drivers ready to start, you would have written for sure the usage of the national A9 Strada Statale, highway, whatever you may call it, northbound to the Switzerland, to maybe also think to travel by night, indeed, and then again north, passing Switzerland, and then crossing the borders to get to France. But before doing that, you would have had a breathtaking type of panorama view around you and around your truck, up to Lucerne, for sure. You would have followed their national route, indeed, the national route 2. Then again, close to Basel, still northbound, at this point maybe northwest bound almost. It would have been quite long, spectacular, close to then the crossed border of France to get to Strasbourg, indeed, and then maybe with a westbound massive turn to actually not go in Germany, but a bit more northwest, passing also the French city of Metz, but not crossing the city, just using it as a turning point. Then again, northbound, close to get to the Luxembourg city and state. And then again, northwest, to finally almost clinch the borders of the Benelux. But once again, north, you would have then followed the path up to Liège or Brussels, but given the current map and availability on Euro Truck Simulator, I'm sure you would have chosen to avoid the mess of Bruxelles even back then, 30 years ago, because then from Liège or Liège, as is pronounced in Italy, you would have arrived to the small town of Hasselt and then to the facility of Zolder racetrack. That would have been your long trip written with Google Maps around 1,000 kilometers, at least for sure 900 in excess. Then what? Well, you would have turned on your truck, you would have parked close to the Auto Delta company for the last time before saying hello to everybody, and knowing that maybe given all the Alfa Romeo 155 models available back then between privateers and official works team, the trailers maybe would have been two, not just one, but in Euro Truck Simulator 2 you can play just with one truck per time. You would have had a companion in your long trip, and let me start to say thank you to the user and editor and modder Antonio62 for creating this beautiful trailer of the Alfa Romeo Racing Marlboro sponsored that maybe could resemble the beginning of Alfa Romeo Racing in the 80s for the Formula 1 type of racing. We will use it anyway. On top, or at least in front of our Alfa Romeo beautifully crafted trailer, we would have had a newly delivered from Iveco company, still under Fiat Group, Eurostar in the best version possible, so with 450 horsepower in excess. And it would have been our workhorse to bring at least 2, if not 3 cars inside the trailer. I think that while we are traveling at the speed of light, almost, I think that we are going to take advantage of the map of Euro Truck Simulator 2 that digitally is representing us starting from the east side of Milan, so not real like the original location of Auto Delta Spa, but nonetheless, it's a game, we are faking everything. Anyway, would be late evening or early night on possibly Sunday closing a working week, with this truck finally reaching the east side of Milan, following the Tangenziale Ovest or Tangenziale West. Now, still nowadays freely offered by the Italian government. And then northbound, you may think to pass Como, maybe, I'm not sure. I'm not great in geography as a student when I was a student. But regardless of this, at normal speed, we would have switched between the A50 up to the A9 to cross the borders between Italy and Switzerland, and would have been rightly placed here in the northwest part of Milan. Then what? Well, a long trip again, as said, crossing also with the direction of Berna and Zurigo initially, crossing for sure some barriers to start the paid fraction of highways, and then the trip that we already seen close to, and then the long trip seen together with Google Maps freely online. Talking about Auto Delta does bring me to the Alfa Romeo 155 car That was anyway the secret weapon for Alfa Romeo in this second season participating in the DTM, given that was the powerful tool actually winning everything, or at least all the titles, back in 1993. So yes, at the end it was quite a successful campaign in 93 for Alfa Romeo, winning the title as a manufacturer, but also, as said, with Nicola Larini, the Drivers' Championship, with the special, allow me to say, diamond to actually win at the Nürburgring on the 20 kilometers racetrack, the first time he, for real, had the opportunity to race there. I do remember reading Italian magazines that before that win, Larini just did 20 laps to possibly know the track and learn a bit what was expecting to face during the race day. Talking about the weapon, the Alfa Romeo 155 V6 Ti was an FIA Class 1 touring car that Alfa Corse raced from 93 to 96 in the before-mentioned Deutsche Tourenwagen Meisterschaft and the subsequent International Touring Car Championship. It was a naturally aspirated high-revving 2.5 liters 60 degrees V6 engine that was coupled for a four-wheel drive system, TI stays for trazione integrale, rated at 426 power stroke, 420 HP at 11,500 RPM. Leaving our truck drivers to sleep a bit and everything in the first leg of the trip should have ended with a night to restore for the first driver, maybe also for the second, that would have afforded the day after another long leg, at least the second half. But the day after would have been not only a switch on shift for the truck drivers, but also an involvement for the team in the top left corner with a team flight, thanks to the Sabena Belgium National Air Company. And on the right, for the drivers that, given how looking for the adrenaline they always are, they maybe would have booked a charter, or maybe they would have chosen to fly with a private plane. How? Well, for the top left corner, the Sabena National Civil Service on a Boeing 727 would have been for sure without the GPS. Instead, I have used here in the small video, starting from Linate in the southeast part of Milan, northbound directly to Brussels National Airport. On the top right corner, you would have had maybe Nicola Larini, Alessandro Nannini, maybe Christian Danner, I don't know. Every possible great driver, adventurous enough, would have also tried to get a private license to fly freely. And maybe, given that many, if not all, racing drivers all live in Monaco, they would have used the Nice facility very close to Monte Carlo to actually bring the luggage, start the engines of the plane, avoid the Alps to have a possibly panoramic view of the south part of France while turning northbound to avoid the mountains and taking advantage of the better weather and avoiding the hurdle to pass also the Alps, like instead the civil jet would have done. I'm just guessing. It's not a real personal timetable that Nicola Larini and Alessandro Nannini shared with me. But nonetheless, was anyway a possibility that would have embraced all the persons involved on a racing effort to bring cars, materials, motorhome on the same place, more or less, in the same time. So what? Well, for the truck would have been a 2 days travel, almost. For what was the civil jet with the civil service would have been maybe easily 2 or 3 hours effort. A bit longer for the drivers with a private plane. This is Baron I don't remember the model, but the one you find on Flight Simulator X. And yes, they would have chosen to do it maybe with less rush in their day, because technically the first to arrive on the track is the set of trailers and trucks to bring the material, as said, cars, equipment, motorhome. The team maybe sometimes arrives the day after. The drivers would be not expected there until Wednesday, if not Thursday, to actually participate in all the appointments with the press, with the fans, and with a quick tour of the track together with their engineers. But just to say that nowadays you can fakely do whatever you want with video games. It's just a matter of them combining the videos, maybe, yes, and maybe then listening also to the radio, because if you like, not only you can manage all communication using the radio with your planes, private or civil that they are, but also on Euro Truck Simulator 2 you can use a radio software named LocalRadio that every time you cross a country it switches automatically to the national radio set of a different channel here in digital. So you would use the DAB, the digital audio broadcasting, not the original FM AM radio. But given the type of function that does, for a truck driver would have been exactly this, just running and running and running and running and running and driving, and sometimes maybe more than the road or more than the signal, the change of frequency from a national to a foreign radio would have signed indeed the change of the ground you are driving on. Here on the video, last note from myself, obviously the truck would have arrived on Monday night or late evening on track. The team with the Sabena flight would have arrived on Monday night, maybe just a quick night in the hotel, and the day after from the morning going to the track to open all the trailers and prepare the material. And then from Wednesday morning or Thursday morning also the drivers would have arrived there. No more words on Flight Simulator X and Euro Truck Simulator 2. Go back to racing with the DTM1994 mod available for GTR2, here modded and updated to its 16th anniversary patch. I was immediately involved into the qualification because I was watching some cars taking racing lines and so on, because the Zolder version is not the original 94 edition, it's the 2011 FIA GT. And I was immediately looking at the best gunners, if you like Klaus Ludwig with the AMG Mercedes C-Class, as well as Gianni Giudici with the private Alfa Romeo 155. We go also to have a look quickly to Roland Asch, a close friend to Alessandro Nannini, if you remember that season, especially by the end of the championship. Again, with a Mercedes-Benz C-Class that we will drive in the next episodes. I don't know precisely when. We will find also Alessandro Nannini, our teammate for today, with the number 2, Alfa Romeo 155, still fast, still crazy like a mad dog, but really one of the best drivers ever existed in Italy, and not only. You may remember him before the helicopter crash, being very successful with the Benetton Formula One team, and not only. He was also one of the young guns for the Lancia, or Lancia in Italian, effort during the Group C era in the mid-80s, beginning of 80s, mid-80s. We will find him in another theme this year on iKeysRacing channel. So we have a look also to Alessandro clinching a P6, not improving actually. So maybe we can switch also to have a look to our garage and go to load a basic car setup that I have prepared offline in my spare time. So you can copy and paste the first page of the current view. I'm just going down to maybe 10 liters, yes, 10-15 liters for few laps in the qualification. And the second page will bring, allow me to say, the original vanilla car setup for this car. I have just made slightly modification to the differential. Remember that this car is a four-wheel drive, so behaves in a different way than a usual front, mid or rear mounted engine on a race car with real axle actually pushing forward the car. The behavior is absolutely different, and I've never been so much in trouble to find my pace. But above all, what you see is technically what you get from the original mod. And so let's go for the first attempt of qualification. I don't know why, I will solve it very soon. The car in the pit is automatically driven by the AI. Don't ask me why, I don't know, I don't understand it, but that's it. I leave you the full experience within the cockpit. I will just talk when we will come back from the qualification. Enjoy the ride. Okay, too wide, too long in the braking zone for the last hairpin. I think I will give up and back to the garage just to have a look to the lap times of our contenders for today. And I must admit I'm full of rust for sure playing GTR2, but also disappointed because anyway I am driving the Nicola Larini official works car, so I was expected at least to be around 128.5, let's say 29, like Alessandro Nannini. Instead, I find myself and ourselves sorry for the poor performance in mid-pack for the Alfa Romeos, but all the others are privateers, so I'm not happy at all. Also the Christian Danner, Giorgio Francia red colored is anyway an Alfa Romeo semi-official, if you like, Giorgio Francia being the boss for Alfa Romeo Racing organization. And so honestly, it's not where I want it to be. My struggles are around the car setup for sure, but especially about the behavior of the four-wheel drive car, and reducing maybe the differential should allow me to corner a bit easier, maybe, because we open up a single differential. I don't remember if the original Alfa Romeo 155 had two differential, one at the front, one at the rear. I would switch with all the risks involved to the soft compound used during qualification. Let's have a surf in the grid parade, and then again I will leave you with the pure racing that GTR2 offers, and we will talk together again at the end of the video. Enjoy it. Wow, I was not expecting to win, just to be in the top 10, possibly in the top 5 with the help of some retirements, crashes and issues for the others. So I was just trying to be clean and possibly decently consistent to not lose time here and there. So I've been very cautious, and arriving in front of Stefano Modena with, maybe Nannini with the second official works Alfa Romeo, then Gianni Giudici now in the frame. Alfa Romeo swept the podium today, then Roland Asch and maybe Bernd Schneider, I don't remember. I don't know yet all the drivers, just looking at the cars. With the Mercedes C180 class, then I'm seeing P6 for another Alfa Romeo. As well as a P7 for Christian Danner, maybe the number 11. Then Michael Bartels, I do recognize this one. Giorgio Francia, the boss. And I don't remember then all the other Alfas, if they were in the 93 version or not. But for what I see, up to the top 10, I just see Alfa Romeos. Mercedes are not here. So almost confirming what was a strong dominance for the Italian marque back then. The official Mercedes that were the main threat to Alfa Romeo are maybe far back in the classification. Yes, the second one was Alessandro Nannini, so it is a 1-2 for us as an official team. Ah no, sorry, was Stefano Modena second. Yes, then Gianni Giudici, Roland Asch, Bernd Schneider, Franz Engelstler. Okay, Christian Danner, Michael Bartels, Giorgio Francia, Danny Pfeil, the top 10. But up to P14 with Danny Sullivan, the American ace, we get official and non-official Alfa Romeos, just two Mercedes in the top 14 cars. And from the Ford Mustang onwards, the KL2 indication is for Class 2 cars, basically Grand Tourers, Tourers, not Grand Tourers. Alfa Romeo's Mercedes and Opel Calibras were actually, allow me to say, prototypes dressed like what were the original cars back then sold on a normal dealership. And so Alfa Romeo was anyway with the 155 bringing Italy to Germany and convincing German buyers to embrace an Italian brand with pros and cons, but for sure in the mid-90s German cars were anyway considered superior, but technically Alfa Romeo demonstrated the opposite, as well as for the lap times at this point, because I'm looking at my 129.1. That is anyway my best performance so far, because then I've lowered down the pace, and we were anyway close to the pace of Stefano Modena, that arrived very close to our bonnet, to our rear of the car. Let's have a look to also Gianni Giudici as a privateer, 129. Okay, yes, 29.6. Then what? Maybe we can have a look to the best Mercedes. I mean, we can play with it as long as we want. I was looking also to Nannini. Yeah, 129.7 at the end of the race. Okay, understood. So the pace was there anyway. But we were not the quickest. Just the 5th quickest car. And we had, 1 second of gap over, as a difference, as a negative point with Roland Asch, that really drive in the traffic maybe. There is a 139 and then another 39 and then a 127. So 10 seconds more are not a pit stop, but maybe some issue found here and there. So the real gap was around 1 second or half a second compared to Opels and Mercedes. We will, keep it in our mind for the future. Points will be awarded to the first top 10 drivers having 20, 15, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1, regardless of the class. And this projects this first view for the current ranking. This time we will have not only the Constructor Championship but also the Drivers' one. So for the future we will be more and more similar to what is and what was the real type of challenge for manufacturers and drivers, clinch their respective titles. That being said, thank you very much for watching. That's it for today. My apologies again for being so absent from the web and from YouTube especially, and I hope to regain a bit of momentum thanks to my private time spare life to possibly look for. Stay very well, best wishes, obrigado, muchas gracias, merci beaucoup, thank you, dankeschön, spasiba, grazie, arigato, and thank you again for voting the polls on the community page. This theme is because you have voted to see together the DTM1994 using GTR2. Stay very well, bye bye.